We are the Church of the Larger Fellowship, the Unitarian Universalist congregation with no geographical boundaries. We believe in cultivating curiosity and transformation that is rooted in profound love.
For over 85 years, the ministries of the Church of the Larger Fellowship have circled the globe and crossed the walls of prisons. We are a spiritual lifeline for our over 2,000 members in prison, who are also connected to individual Unitarian Universalists through our letter writing ministry.
In our online community, we offer weekly worship, classes, and groups. Our monthly magazine, Quest, supports the spiritual lives of thousands around the globe. We know better than anyone how deep and meaningful connections can be formed even from a distance.
We are proud to be a leader in this faith movement, and we invite you to get involved in our ministry. We strive to be a place where anyone from anywhere can find spiritual refuge anytime they need it. Welcome to the Church of the Larger Fellowship.
We are so excited to bring you an all-new episode of the Voices of Unitarian Universalism, known affectionately as The View.
The View is a weekly Unitarian Universalist talk show discussing important faith-based topics from an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural perspective.
Since 2013, we have gathered every Thursday from September to June to welcome guests from around the world.
Our guests are writers, scholars, activists, and religious thought leaders who are shaping Unitarian Universalism and society for the 21st century and beyond.
We hope that today's show inspires you. We hope it builds your faith and gives you perspective to see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life.
Welcome to The View.
Welcome. DC is here. Welcome to the Voices of Unitarian Universalism. We are here. And Dante, DC, and I were left unsupervised today, so this is going to be quite the roundtable.
Let's see if they do that again.
Right. You should know better, right?
Yeah.
I'm the Reverend Dr. Michael Tino, one half of the lead ministry team of your Church of the Larger Fellowship, this Unitarian Universalist congregation without borders or walls. And I am coming to you from Peekskill, New York, a little north of New York City, the land of the Quechua, Wappinger, and Munsee Lenape peoples, where it is finally fall. It is finally autumn. A cold front came through on Wednesday, and it went from 85 degrees on Tuesday to 55 degrees on Thursday, and it's glorious. Because let me tell you, I 85 is not my preferred weather. It is finally fall here in New York. Dante, how are you?
I am well. I am here in one of the cities founded by a Black person in Chicago, Illinois, also the land of the people of the Council of the Three Fires. And fall, it is. It was like 2 days ago, I was sweating in here. And now I have on one of my comfy fall sweaters. So, yes, fall, I think fall is here because I don't think we'll be over 70 degrees in the next 2 weeks. So I think fall is here. Hey, DC, how's it going?
Hey, I'm okay. It's fall here in Maine, let me tell you what. I'm Reverend DC Fortune. My pronouns are he and him, and I am coming to you from the banks of the Androscoggin River in Auburn, Maine, which is the unceded land of the Maliseet and Micmac and Passamaquoddy, the Wabanaki Confederation, and the Pequawket and Pennacook, and so many others. And we have just about hit peak foliage. There are sciencey people who can like calculate it down to the minute, and I'm like, y'all need to like get a job, not get a job, get a hobby that's not But like, okay, whatever you do, you boo. But it's it was 85 here on Tuesday, and then Wednesday was cooler, and Thursday it poured buckets. And today I woke up and it was 48 degrees.
Yeah, we got the poured buckets yesterday, and so it's glorious. It's beautiful and sunny. And I think anyone who thinks that fall foliage is a science and not an art, like has their priorities like a little out of whack. I love science. Don't get me wrong. I am 100% pro science. So.
Yeah. But I'd forgotten how vivid the sugar maples are. You know, they're a different kind of, like, I lived in Pennsylvania and I've lived in Massachusetts and I've lived in Northern California and the Midwest, and there are no colors like the sugar maples and the white birches in New England. The vivid, like the red that just makes your teeth ache with the beauty. It's beautiful. Beautiful. It's so great to be here.
I am headed up to the Adirondacks in far upstate New York this weekend, and that's sort of an extension of that New England, Maine.
Yeah, we let you claim it. We're New York's not New England, but
it's not New England, but the fall foliage is as beautiful in that particular part of the world.
Right. That's still Appalachian Trail stuff over there. So we'll let you.
No. The Appalachian Trail is 2 miles from my house. That's
really? Down where you are?
That's a whole different mountain range up there.
No kidding. Yeah, that's Finger Lakes. Okay. Anyway.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. What do we have to talk about today? I know that Aisha, who left us unsupervised, and so we don't actually have to listen to her, wanted us to talk about abolition today and the next steps from the Congregational Study Action issue that passed at GA. And so I wore my shirt, my abolition shirt.
I'm wearing layers like Dante.
It's not cold enough yet in my house.
Right. Yeah.
I will put on layers when I go outside, but my house is well insulated enough that it is not actually yet chilly in the house. Are there things that we need to touch base on in the UU roundup today?
Oh, what else is going on? It's fall.
The Church of the Larger Fellowship has just finished our fall fundraiser. It is done, and we came really close to our $25,000 goal, close enough that we feel good ending the fundraiser and not begging people for more money. We raised about $23,000, which is really super. So thank you to everyone who was generous and who gave to that. I'm trying to put links in the chat while I talk, and it's.
I was going to say, yeah, put a link up so that if anybody missed it and wants to try and redeem themselves, like maybe me.
If you want one of these T-shirts,
I have one of those T-shirts, but
if you want one of these T-shirts, I put the link for that.
Okay, in the chat.
It is very plainly clfuu.org/merch. And you can get your CLF gear. We have aprons and caps and bandanas now. The bandanas are ridiculously expensive. I mean, it's all, on demand printed, so none of it is cheap. But
right.
I thought, bandanas, that'll be accessible.
No. Nuh-uh.
Get yourself a T-shirt for $2 more than the bandanas. Get yourself a T-shirt.
Right. Yeah.
But there are hoodies for those of you who are celebrating the advent of fall. We do have hoodies in the store, and there are tote bags. C. Claire Bird says, "Love my CLF tote bag." There are tote bags too. To donate, I think you can still. go to clfuu.org/beloved. I don't think we actually closed the page. So to donate, if you want to make a last-minute donation to our fall fundraiser, please feel free. And our abolition page, I'm going to put one more link up there.
I'm not seeing a place to donate on the CLF page, the UUA CLF page.
I don't know what the UUA CLF page is.
It's where to connect with us. And then there's another thing that says Church of the Larger Fellowship.
Oh, well, you should just go to clfuu.org.
Oh, I missed the letters. Okay.
And there should be a donate button somewhere around there. Ways to give. There's a ways to give.
There we go. Awesome.
But we want to talk a little bit about abolition, and that is, you can find out more at clfuu.org/abolition. Also, or just scan the QR code on my back. Which you could do if I actually were nimble enough to put the QR code on my back in the screen of the computer. But for those of you online, the link should be there in the comments on Facebook and YouTube. If you were a viewer this spring, you might remember that the Church of the Larger Fellowship was sponsoring one of the proposals for what's called a congregational study action issue. And this, like, beloveds, this is peak UU acronym jargon hell, right? Because they call it the CSAI, Congregational Study Action Issue. And what is that?
It just rolls off the tongue now, doesn't it?
Right, doesn't it? You might wonder, what the heck is that? Congregational study action issues are the ways in which Unitarian Universalist congregations commit to studying particular issues over the course of several years. And then out of that study comes something called a statement of conscience, SOC. If you're in jargon land, a statement of conscience. And the statements of conscience are the ways in which Unitarian Universalist congregations take formal stances on justice issues. So, for example, our UUA headquarters supports with resources and with the resources of our organizing team those issues that congregations have taken stances on through statements of conscience. And we are hoping that there will be a strong statement of conscience on the agenda at General Assembly 2027 in San Jose, California, in which we as Unitarian Universalists will take a stand in favor of abolition. Now, you might say, abolition of what? And that's a really good question. That's a really good question, because there are a bunch of things that we really need to examine abolishing. And it starts with slavery, right?
Mm-hmm.
It starts with the fact that neither Unitarians nor Universalists ever formally took a denominational stance on the abolition of chattel slavery in the 19th century.
Good God.
Because many of them were slave owners. Let's just be real, right? Many of them profited from the sale and enslavement of human beings whose labor was unpaid. Many of them made bajillions of dollars from, in today's dollars at least, from the transatlantic slave trade, right? And our institutions were founded on that money. The institutions have that blood in their foundations.
Mm-hmm.
But part of that part of that history is that we never took a stand on it. And so it's time, like it's almost 200 years too late, but it's time that we do that, because right now the people who are legally enslaved in the United States are incarcerated. There are, of course, many people who are illegally enslaved still in the United States, especially immigrants who.
Mhm.
But we don't need to get into illegal enslavement. There are people who are legally enslaved in the United States because the 13th Amendment has an exception. The 13th Amendment allows enslavement as punishment for a crime. And so our beloveds who are incarcerated are enslaved. And we understand the arc of history as directly connecting the chattel slavery of enslaved Africans for hundreds of years until the mid 19th century directly connects to the enslavement of incarcerated people and the mass incarceration in the United States now. So we want to abolish slavery, but we also want to abolish prisons. And we don't believe that anyone deserves to be locked up. And that's a little harder sell for a lot of Unitarian Universalists. Like, let's abolish slavery is like an easy sell. Let's abolish prisons is a little harder sell. So we have to make a theological case for what we have to do in order to make that possible. And I'm going to stop talking because Dante and DC are nodding, and I want to hear your voices on this issue.
Go ahead, Dante. I'm just trying to give money here.
So, I'm inclined to do something I never do. You know, this thing that people call devil's advocate, and I just never think the devil needs an advocate.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an oppositional question that's arising in my mind, partly because the 13 colonies was a prison. It was a penal colony. Europeans were sending their criminals here, right? We know that happened in Australia. Same thing. Europeans were sent there penal. So rather than having containers, they just ship their criminals to other people's lands. So if we're talking about if we're going to talk about the abolishment of prison, I think for a lot of folks, it's hard to wrap their head around is then, are we saying that there are no things that people can do, no covenants people can break where they may need a timeout? And what does that look like? So, I just thought I would. I think it's a question that people are grappling with around the abolition of prison.
I think we have to grapple with that question, right? Because I think that there certainly are things that people do that are going to merit separation from the rest of society. But the separation that should exist and the separation that does exist are very different. Is the way I respond to that. And what I want to abolish is a system that is based in punishment, that is based in indelible sin. You have committed a sin that is now indelible. You are a felon, right? You have been marked with some scarlet letter. And because of that sin, you are deserving of dehumanization and punishment. Because that's the theology that our society runs on. And let's be clear, what's a sin deserving of that punishment is a very fraught. It's a very fraught question, right? Because there are things like nobody's in jail for wage theft. Let's just put it. Nobody's in jail for wage theft. It's illegal, but nobody's in jail.
A lot of people.
That's right. Nobody's in prison for wage theft. There are a
Right.
whole
But
lot of
steal the photocopier or the computer out of your place of work, baby, and you're going to jail.
Well, no one's also in jail for poisoning whether through chemical waste from their factories or the chemicals they put in their products that they set that we pay that they convince us to buy from them that they know are harmful to us.
Or Flint, where they just intentionally pollute the drinking water of people they don't like.
Yeah.
Nobody's in prison for making billions of dollars flooding the market with opioids.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Nobody's in prison for that. But if you sell 2 OxyContin pills, you're going to prison. Yeah. Right? Let's be really clear. Right? So like how our society judges what is worthy of prison is fraud.
Depends on how good your lawyer is and how much money you've got.
Yeah, our system is premised on the criminalization of poverty, the criminalization of being non-white, the criminalization of being non-male, the criminalization of being non-heterosexual, right? Like all these things, they're not just like made taboo, they're criminalized.
Yes.
So all of those communities are purposely over-policed. And so that's how you get people who are only 13% of the population, Black Americans, being 30+% of those who are incarcerated, right? Because it's not about justice, because we are targeting specific communities to incarcerate. And that's, because like if all criminals had about the equal chance of being convicted and going and serving time, I think I'd be less objective to a system of incarceration, because it would be a rule equal or equitably applied. But we know that has never happened. Not in this country, not in the United States.
I would still have a theological problem with the notion of this indelible sin that is deserving of punishment, that is deserving of isolation and dehumanization. Because I think the ways in which you get people to do the repair work that is necessary when they harm others is not by sticking them in a cage, right? It's not by forcing them to work for 12 cents an hour.
Oh, absolutely
It's not by taking away their access to their religious community or their relatives or their loved ones or their communities of support. And that's what prisons do.
Yeah.
C. Clarebird has an interesting question in the chat. What would be an abolitionist view of jury service? And that's a fascinating question. I know that if I were called to serve on a jury, I would certainly do it, but I would have a heck of a hard time putting someone in prison.
One of the reasons like that's a hard question for me to respond to is because my mind goes to, when I think about abolition and incarceration, my mind doesn't even go to prisons first. My mind goes to this concept that justice is blind, that the law is equally applied to everyone. And actually, from a justice perspective, equality exacerbates structural oppression. When you don't add a layer of context, right? So we flood a community with drugs, and then we start arresting people for drug use and drug selling. We don't get the context in our system. The context of your sin or your crime is no consideration. It doesn't matter. And how can that be just? When there's no context.
Mm.
Yeah, so C. Clarebird says that they were recently called to jury service and disclosed their religious beliefs around abolition and was not seated on a jury. I mean, I think that's the ethical thing to do, is to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. What's going to happen is that you're not going to be put on a jury, because if you don't buy into the philosophy of punishment that our society embraces, then they don't have use for you in that system.
Yeah.
There are going to be 12 people, though, on Luigi Mangione's jury, who, white dude, let's just be real clear, who allegedly shot the CEO of United Healthcare, who may or may not have had it coming. But like, there are going to be 12 people on his jury that he's going to bat his Long Island with that, and they're like, jury nullification will all of a sudden be a thing again. You mark my words.
I just, that was one of the hardest concepts we had to teach as a social justice educator, was that equality and equity are not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that when you are inside of an oppressive system, equality actually exacerbates oppression, because it does not allow for context. And I think that is a huge, if it's our notion of blind justice is as bad as our notion of color blindness. It's problematic. I don't think of you as a person of color. Then, baby, you don't see me, and this is the problem.
Yeah,
and the fact that justice is contextless. The notion of justice with no context, like, it's actually ridiculous how we've had this system for this long. It's kind of nuts.
Well, and that, beloveds out there in Viewland, if you're wondering, is critical race theory, right? Like, all this stuff that, like, the people on the far right are saying is critical race theory, like, really, really isn't. Because you don't actually get into critical race theory until you get to, like, law school. And you learn that, like, what critical race theory says is that if a concept equally applied has unequal effects, there are other factors at play, right? There are other factors at play, and that we need to understand what those other factors are. And so that's exactly what it is, right? Equality does not have equal impact, equitable impact. Does not have equitable impact, because there are other factors at play that skew it, the context. So abolition. We're about to launch, and so look for this, beloveds, a monthly discussion series. I believe the first one will be the first week of November. And they will be open discussions, and we will actually record the conversations and put them on our abolition website, clfuu.org/abolition. And we're doing this in partnership with the Commission on Social Witness, which is the elected committee of the Unitarian Universalist Association that shepherds this process of the congregational study action issue. So we're working in partnership with them, and we're about to launch a monthly education and conversation series. And we're starting with, like, what are the on-ramps to abolition? What are the everyday aspects of this? What does restorative justice mean? How is it used in our homes or in our congregations, or in schools in our community, right? Because, like, if you've not heard of the school to prison pipeline, look it up. We'll probably have a show about it at some point. But it's pretty well documented that if you take this punitive, sin-based philosophy and apply it to kids in schools, what winds up happening is that kids get suspended for longer and longer and longer periods of time, which means they're missing out on more and more and more and more education, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately they might get expelled from school, which means they don't have access to educational support anymore.
Or
And-
nutrition for most of them.
Or nutrition, yeah, I mean, for a lot of them. And what that leads to is them committing crimes to survive. And those kids are more likely to wind up in prison. And let's take a wild guess at what kids are more likely to be started down that pathway.
It's
we can take a wild guess and we would be right.
Yeah.
That right, black and brown kids are more likely to be started down that pathway. Kids with disabilities are more likely to be started down that pathway.
Yeah, I I just was telling Reverend Michael the other day. When I worked at the National Office of the YWCA, I did a big a project around. There was a report that came out of Georgetown called "The Sexual Abuse to Prison Pipeline," a girl's story, and it talked about how most young women's interactions with the criminal justice system are actually because they are trauma victims, assault survivors, and the behaviors that they're displaying are actually coping mechanisms that come from their sexual assaults. And so the very things they're doing to save themselves and protect themselves are the things that bring them into contact with the criminal justice system. And it shows the numbers of how many women and girls who are in prison, particularly women and girls of color, in prison, are sexual abuse survivors. And it's pretty staggering. Very, very staggering. And it starts in school. So it's a nuanced version of the school to prison pipeline that's particularly looking at what happens to young girls.
Right. And it starts with people going, I don't believe you.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's something wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
Or you deserve the violence that was meted against you.
Yeah.
Those are the things it starts with, right? DC?
Yeah.
What were you wearing? Why did you act like that? Why didn't you tell somebody? Like all of the things.
Yeah.
Right. What are all the ways that you deserved it?
Yeah.
And one of the
Dan,
books,
don't tell anybody. Good God.
one of the books that really gave me a new perspective on abolition is Adrienne Marie Brown's "We Will Not Cancel Us," because I was like, "Is it on everybody's desk?" I have the digital copy. I don't have a physical one. But it's anyone who's interested in the concept of abolition. I think it's an accessible text. It's a short text. She writes in a very accessible way, but what she focuses on is not prisons specifically, but what she's talking about is how we have created and we seem to enjoy living in a culture of punishment. And what does that mean? She talks about how we relish punishing one another.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Augustine.
Yeah.
Augustine, all the way back to Augustine. The eroticization of punishment.
Mm.
And it's theology.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Your body is evil, and suffering brings you closer to God, and yeah.
And it's shit theology.
Yeah.
And I liked it because it gives us a way to think about abolition that is very everyday. It doesn't. It's not something over there. It's like in your house, in your spirit, in every interaction and every relationship that you have. How do we respond to people when they break covenant? Right? Do we even have a plan for if a person breaks covenant with us? Right? Like all of these kinds of things, because covenants do get broken.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And people get harmed, right? People do harm.
Yeah.
And
So
need a pathway to repair that harm.
Mm.
yeah.
And need a pathway to make it, to make it possible to be in a relationship again.
Yeah. And I think the reason that prison becomes an easy target around abolition is it is a way in which I see the relishing of the punishment. In the United States particularly, because there are other ways to have systems of incarceration. I think we have one of the kind of more of the sort of industrialized countries, one of the more like just horrendous versions of this, because it doesn't have to look the way, like I said, even if you were just like a prison reformer and not a prison abolition, like the reformers' argument is it doesn't have to look like this. Even if we do, it doesn't have to look. We got lots of examples of other ways it could look. Yeah.
I would just say that it has to look so different from what we have that
Yeah.
we need to start with a different institution.
I mean, I'm good with burning it down or building something else as you're tearing it down, like whatever. But yeah.
But the thing to me is, like, we will never be able to get there if we don't honestly start thinking about what the root causes are.
Mm-hmm.
What are the root causes of what we consider crime in this country? It's economic insecurity, by and large, right? It's like 2/3 of crime. Well, what 2/3 of crime that people actually go to prison for?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just put it that way. Do the not the shit that people get away with all the time. The crime that people actually go to prison for can be directly traced to economic insecurity. We talked about sexual assault. That's about power.
Yep.
Right? Those are crimes of exerting power over other people. And it is possible to teach people better than that. Right? Like, I think it's actually possible to teach people better.
But we also don't like about power.
No, we don't. Of course we don't.
We like to just paint a picture as if there is no, again, without context, no context of power, no context of systems. We, again, particularly Americans, United States, North Americans, we love to talk about people as individuals. And I mean, again, that's a very white cultural thing. We want to talk about individual people instead of systems and communities. And it's like, you can't separate these things, I have people say, well, my family didn't own slaves and I don't understand why. And I'm like, but you benefit from the system. You're using an individual analysis. I'm using a system analysis here, right? So no, maybe your individual family was not, but you definitely have benefited from that system.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, my family wasn't even on this continent when slavery happened, and I benefit from the system.
Same.
Like, my family was allowed to come here because at some point the people with power and the people with money, and by and large the same people, decided they needed low-cost labor, and they were willing to let Europeans in to be that low-cost labor.
Right. Well, low cost but high skilled.
Right.
My folks from Ireland were low cost, low skilled. Right, which is a different stripe of that.
Which also explains the connection between the Irish and American policing. right?
Mhm.
'Cause we all know,
Yeah.
like, if you know anything, there is a very explicit history between Irish immigrants and America, which is why we call it a paddy wagon, right? Like,
Yep.
Well,
and yeah,
and that exists largely because joining the police was a pathway to respectability.
It was how the Irish
Mhm.
became white.
Yes, right.
And you didn't need a lot of skills. You didn't need a lot of education. I mean, you
Nope.
still don't in the 21st century. But
Right. Yeah, it got you respectability. It got you a union job. Eventually it got your kids insurance and braces and dentists and college and yeah.
yeah,
And this is not to say that there wasn't backlash even at that time against letting in poor white people from Europe.
Yes.
But eventually, the poor white people
Assimilated.
disappeared into the fabric,
right,
whereas like the poor black folks couldn't.
Right.
right. I mean, I mean, we all, as a Black studies scholar, I mean, the Irish and the Italians were used as buffer classes.
Yep.
Over black folks, and again, because they are Europeans, they could change their names and they could just kind of assimilate. Like, you could stop being Italian or Irish and just be white, but black folks,
Right.
like, I could never be white because like I could be as white adjacent in my mind as I want to be,
Right. Yeah.
but I'm never going to be white.
In North America, there's no discernment between somebody from Congo or Ethiopia or Egypt or Benin or anything, right? Whereas with Europe, there's a difference between Swiss and Austrian and German. And the three of them have been fighting about it for thousands of years, right? But they come, yeah.
So it's, there's a kind of assimilation that is not possible to black and brown people, right? And so that changes the dynamic of, again, who's being policed, who's being criminalized, who's being targeted. I remember when the DOJ did the report that came out of Ferguson, and for the first time, we had documentation of what black people had been saying for decades, if not centuries, about not only over policing, not only about racial profiling, but also how municipalities were using racial profiling to fund the municipality, whether it was asset collection, excessive fees and ticking and all of these things, so that you're creating new taxes for the poor, basically, right? To fund your system. And all of that connects to the larger system of incarceration.
I was in St. Louis when that report came out.
Yeah. That's the first time I ever read a federal report from beginning to end. And I was...
Oh, it was grim. It was horrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
So we want to abolish those systems too, right?
Yeah.
We have to abolish the over-policing of poor brown and black communities.
Yeah. We have to talk about our theology's punishment, which really is our theological anthropology, right? What do we really believe about what is human and who is human?
Also, we need to de-incentivize crimes that can be solved, or I don't have the right word, by money. Right? You pay a ticket, you pay a fine, you pay a whatever, so that the city becomes, when cities make their budgets, they're like, how much can we expect from parking meters? How much can we expect from parking tickets? How much can we expect from disturbing the peace, like judgments in court? How much? Right. Yeah. All these bullshit fines that don't happen in the suburbs, because if somebody comes out and arrests somebody in the suburbs, the parents lose their shit and call the mayor and have a hairy fit about it, and they're like, okay, well, we'll concentrate on people who won't complain.
Yeah.
Well, people
And if you can't afford a lawyer in our system, you're fucked.
Yeah, absolutely.
People who don't have standing in the legal system to complain.
Yeah.
Right? And when they do complain, it looks like protest in the street. And then that's criminalized too.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not a simple thing, but I do believe it's foundational. And again, as a person raised and socialized as a Christian, the theology of sin, evil, and pain has to be interrogated deeply.
Yes. And our Unitarian and Universalist ancestors started some of that interrogation. They didn't necessarily do it real well. They didn't necessarily get to the conclusions we wish they had. But they at least put in a crowbar into the crack and opened it up a little bit more. I think,
and saw a mirror and ran back out.
Right. Are people inherently sinful? For example.
Yeah.
Our Unitarian ancestors debated that.
Yeah.
Is God, or whatever the holy is, ultimately a punishing force for people who've done wrong? Right? Our Universalist ancestors openly defied that. Right?
And were excluded from jury duty because of it.
That's exactly right. They are your ancestors, C. Claire Bird. They were excluded from jury duty because they believed.
Well, they could not be believed if they swore on a Bible, because it was the threat of hell that kept them honest, as opposed to just an understanding of what is true and just. Yeah.
They don't make you swear on a Bible anymore.
Yeah.
No.
And again, and your theology of sin, evil, and punishment informs everything we do.
Yes.
Everything. If you really believe, if you're okay with God being a punishing God, if your divine concept, your concept of the ultimate divinity is very punishment oriented, why would you have a problem with systems of punishment? Because you'd be like, well, this is who God is.
This is what God intends for you.
Yeah.
You deserve it.
Yeah.
You deserve the violence that is being meted upon you. Right? It goes back to this, what do people deserve? Which is a theological construct. DC, you look like you want to say something.
I got nothing polite.
Welcome to The View, DC Fortune.
Well,
nobody's dropped the F word.
When you say this is what you deserve, you're doing that in the second person.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any capacity to look at that in the first person and say, this is what I deserve? And I'm not seeing it, because Calvin, there are some who are select, and that's us. We are God's favorites. So it's the others that deserve this punishment.
And what I wonder, that's such an interesting question. What I wonder, though, DC, is if we did ask people that, would their response be so warped by the public theology about sin and punishment that they would claim that they deserve
Mm-hmm.
punishment.
That's a fascinating question. I would love to see that exercise, but I have no idea how to make that happen.
Well, I mean, we're in conversation with 2,000 incarcerated Unitarian Universalist members of the CLF, and it's something that many of them struggle with. We've had letters and correspondence, like they were told again and again that they deserve what they're getting. And for the first time in their lives, they are encountering a force saying, you don't deserve that. Right? Like, you might have done something bad and you still don't deserve what you're getting. Right? And it's Unitarian Universalism that's telling them that. And it blows their minds. It's like, wait, like, that's not what I've been taught. That's not, that's not the construct that's been drummed into my head from the time I was a kid.
And it's all about control.
Mm-hmm.
And it's within the family. It's about controlling the kids. It's about controlling the women. It's about controlling the girls. It's about controlling the resources.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus, that looks like just a laugh a minute text.
Yeah, I was just sharing with one of the books that I read in seminary is called Battered Love by biblical scholar Renita Weems, who's a womanist biblical scholar. And she talks about, God, the divine punisher, and the ways in which in the Hebrew scriptures, there's so much, she interrogates the sort of normalization of punishment and violence, particularly against women. And again, it's like we've been normalizing this stuff for a really, really long time. So if you come out of a Christian tradition, particularly, and you're struggling around, I think it's a good text to help wrap your mind around how ingrained these theologies of punishment are, how normalized, and who gets the punishment,
and who gives it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Who gets it and who gives it.
And I haven't read this book, and I don't want to assume anything about this author, mm-hmm. who is clearly a biblical scholar of some renown. And in conversations about this that do not rely on that deep biblical scholarship, mm-hmm. I think it's really important for us to say that it's important not to simplify the Bible into mm-hmm. the Hebrew scriptures have a punishment God and the Christian scriptures don't. Because, let's just be really clear, in the Hebrew scriptures, Jacob was spared, mm-hmm. right, by God. And in the Christian scriptures, God killed his own son.
Yeah.
So,
that's some fucked up stuff. All right.
So, it's
1253. That was me.
It's not.
I mean, first of all, let's be clear. Those who we call Christians were Jews. They're Reformed Jews. They practiced Judaism, and they just believed that the Messiah had come, where the other Jews were saying we're still waiting. So yeah, I don't think it's that simple. But I think I try to be very specific when I talk about scriptures, because first of all, the Christian version, what we call the Old Testament, it's not even laid out the way the Hebrew scriptures are, right? It's a Christianized version to support a particular interpretation, right? We Protestants, we don't even have all the same books in our Bible that the Catholics have. And God knows we don't have the books that the Eastern Christians have, right? So for me, when I use Hebrew scriptures or Christian scriptures, I'm just trying to be really clear that there's different interpretations and which one I'm talking about.
But yes, there are all sorts of biblical texts, Hebrew and Christian. There are all sorts of sacred texts in different traditions that support violence, that support the bullshit that humans have perpetrated against each other. And there are all sorts of sacred texts and biblical scriptures that counter that. Right? Like there are all sorts, right? So both of those narratives can be found.
Yeah. It's like the one, how do you know it's actually a holy text is if it contradicts itself. And is irreconcilable.
I mean, well, again, I tell people, even my, when I was what I call a deep Christian, I would tell the people, baby, our own version of this story, our version of we start with 4 different versions. The canon. We know there are more, but we canonized 4 different versions of the life of the Christ, and they don't agree with each other. So if that's what's in the canon, that means
that's not even the other books that they didn't even decide to put in there that don't agree with them.
So imagine what ended up on the editing room floor.
Right. So to me, my interpretation is our tradition is rooted in plurality, in multiple truths, in multiple perspectives. That when you choose to canonize 4 stories that don't say the same thing, you must be honoring that truth is contextual.
Well, and the Hebrew scriptures have 3 narratives that are not separated out into different books. Yeah. They just contradict themselves right there.
Yeah.
Because
Genesis is a hoot. I love reading Genesis.
They took 3 stories and smooshed them together.
Dante, you said our tradition is rooted in plurality. That was the word.
Or multiplicity, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Because that's what's in the canon. Like, so if I'm what I choose to hold on from my Christian upbringing traditions is plurality, multiplicity. That truth is not one, it's not singular, it's multiple. That's why I love the concept of the Trinity. It's a very African concept if you think about who brought it into Christendom, and that God as a community rather than as a single. Like, so I'm, I tend to, my interpretation of Christianity comes through multiplicity and plurality, which is not how I was taught in my daily sort of church going, but in my study of it, this is, at least, and, in multiple truths, if we could hold multiple truths, if more of us would be comfortable holding multiple truths, I think a lot of issues like abolition would become easier for us to actually make headway on. That there are multiple truths.
What is it about humans that desire the simplicity of a binary? Good, bad, right, left, up, down. Is it just simple for our simple little brains to grasp, or is it just lazy that it's easy for our simple little brains to grasp? We don't want to put any more work into it.
I mean, for a learning psychology perspective, it's easier. But I want to say, is it human or is it Western culture? Because not all humans engage in this black, white, binary shit.
And let's be clear. The most beautiful parts of existence, the richest part of existence, exists beyond that, right? I mean, let's go back to the beginning of our show. It is fall, right? It is neither summer nor winter.
Yeah.
And it is glorious and beautiful in its blazing transformation.
Yeah.
Right? The estuary that exists between the salt water and the fresh water is the most teeming with life ecosystem.
Yeah.
The most beautiful and richest parts of existence exist when things are multiply true.
You know, when I left seminary the first time, I discovered something. I had a professor whose expertise was intertestament literature, which I'd never heard of. And this is literature that mostly comes out of when the peoples were in exile and stuff that happens between what we call the Old Testament and the New Testament that is not heavily canonized, right? And I just remember being so fascinated because I was like, most of this stuff was discounted because it was written in the diaspora. And I was like, oh, if I was going to be a biblical scholar, I would have to be a scholar of intertestamental literature because diaspora destroys the myth of purity. Right? So, because even in our Hebrew scriptures, there's a purity sort of, they're laid out in which is the most close to truth.
Okay, so before we have another hour's worth of conversation about that, let's put a pin in it and come back to it. It is 1:01 p.m. here on the United States. We have been having this fascinating conversation for an hour. We will see you next week here on the Voices of Unitarian Universalism, and we'll pick this up. Intertestamental literature. Remember that. Remember it. Remember for next week because I want to have a conversation about that.
My brain kind of hurts.
Be well, beloved. Let your brain rest.
All right. Be well, everybody.
Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to everyone who gives generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible.
Visit clfuu.org/give to make a contribution.
We hope you will join us next week for another episode of the Voices of Unitarian Universalism.